In this week's episode, I'm joined by Salvatore Manzi, a leadership communications coach with over 20 years of experience helping inclusive change makers amplify their influence and impact. This week, our conversation is about history-making wins, Hollywood power moves, and why hiring ghosting needs to go. Hey there, my name is Bernadette Smith, and I'm a keynote speaker and writer. My pronouns are she and her. Welcome to 5 Things in 15 Minutes, my weekly show where I bring good vibes to DEI. That is good vibes to diversity, equity, and inclusion with a little dash of corporate social responsibility. What I found is there are lots of news stories about what's going wrong in the world and lots of negative data. But there are also a lot of things going right. That's what I like to focus on. I search for stories that we can be inspired by and learn from. My hope is to inspire you to experiment with some of these actions and policies to help you build a more inclusive world. Let's get started. Salvatore, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's awesome to be here. I love the vibe. I love the positivity. We need more of this in the world.
Thank you. I'm really thrilled to have you here. Will you tell folks a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. Salvatore Manzi, I'm a leadership communication coach. I sit at the intersection of leadership, communication, and collaboration. My goal is to help leaders and their teams refine the way they communicate so that they can have greater impact and influence more people to action. Inclusion and awareness is integrated into everything I do, and I call it bridging to collaboration. My goal, whether I'm doing a keynote, facilitating a session, or working one-on-one, my focus is always on elevating communication as a key to building better teams, to better decision-making, and to creating an inclusive, high-performing culture, no matter what the organization is.
I think it's so important that you focus on communication because I feel like right now we're kind of walking on eggshells around each other. I think there's a really big failure to communicate. Do you have any sort of quick tricks for folks who are really trying to improve their communication skills? Like, what are some things that you recommend?
It's such a big question. I
Big
want to spend the
question,
rest of the
yeah.
time talking about this. I'm going to just
Yeah.
hit it with my one note. My number one principle is you then me, a you then me principle. And especially in these moments, if I can pause my reaction and spend just one sentence reflecting on them before I talk about me, you then me, it creates a better relationship, creates a better sense of engagement. So I'll talk about you and what's important to you before I get to my point of view or my perspective, even if it's about what you just did. One of the ways I tee off that is to say, hey, what I appreciate about what you just said is. And here's my
That's a good
opinion.
line. That's a really good line. I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, it's all good. No, I'm going to leave it with that. I don't want to overwhelm people.
Well, what I appreciate about what you just said is that it requires us to be thoughtful. Like, we have to be really mindful. I think normally we can be very selfish communicators, right? Or selfish humans, right? And so I like that you are sort of putting the emphasis on what we can give or how we can be a better listener to other folks first, because I think only when we actually listen to folks are we then potentially going to influence them. People want to be heard.
People want to feel seen. They want to feel heard. And it's not easy when it's a inflammatory statement or action to not react. It triggers. So to take that breath and offer so what I appreciate about what I just heard, and then leads into smoother, non-conflict kind of communication with each other.
All right, folks, take a note of that line. What I appreciate about what I just heard, or what I appreciate about what you just said. I think it's a great line. Can you tell folks a little bit about kind of what you are excited about doing professionally? Like right now, what is something that's really lighting you up?
I am writing my book, You Then Me playbook, and it is lighting me up because I'm synthesizing 20 years of coaching leaders in high stakes situations, and I'm putting all the principles. I myself am a bit of an introvert, and I because most public speaking training is geared towards extroverts, I went down the rabbit hole of psychology and neuroscience to understand
Mm.
how do you do this. And so I created frameworks, principles, techniques, and I'm putting them all together after 20 years of coaching, I don't know, thousands of people now. And I'm excited. Hopefully it'll be out April, May. I'm not going to put like a deadline on it, but it'll be out and we can all play. It's a playbook, not a workbook.
Love it. And I understand that you used to work for the World Economic Forum and you led
Oh,
DEI there for a while. Can you talk a little bit about
I
that?
want to clarify that a little bit. I
Okay,
didn't work
please.
for them. I wish. I mean, no, maybe I don't wish. That's such a. Anyway, I did an LGBTQ awareness program for the World Economic Forum, Center for Fourth International Industrial Design, and it was powerful. It was during Gay Pride Month, and
Hmm.
we had a moment where we really took a deep dive at awareness of like where do our stories come from and how does that influence the way we see now and how does that influence organizations and the way we communicate with organizations that we're working
Mm.
with. So it was powerful and fun.
Love it. Love it. Well, let's get into my intro for this week's Five Things newsletter. So last week, I gave a speech, a virtual speech, and during the speech, I often talk about mistakes. I love talking about mistakes, and one of the things I shared is how during my divorce, how the distraction of my divorce, the stress of my divorce, led me to make mistakes at work, and part of the reason of that happened is because I didn't tell anyone what was going on. I never gave anyone a chance to be understanding, to be empathetic, to give me grace. I just sort of kept it all in. And I told that story, and someone sent me a private message during the speech and said basically the same thing. They haven't talked to anyone at work about their separation, about how hard it's been, and so it's causing them to really be distracted and checked out as well. And one thing that I have learned in my experiences is that talking about the hard stuff, and if you can find a way to do it without oversharing, so maybe just a minute or so, talking about the hard stuff pretty briefly, just kind of a heads up in a way, it can be a real great shortcut to building trust, to building connection. It can show that you have humility. It can show that you have resilience. If you even share it in a way that's funny, it can show that you have humor and warmth. And I think that's a really interesting thing for people to be aware of, especially because we have been taught, I'm Gen X, I have been taught not to talk about this stuff, right? And so the beauty of it, right? Yeah, the beauty of it is that I think it actually is a shortcut to trust and connection. So that was my observation from last week. Have you ever had that experience?
No, never. I'm always, yeah, I think for me, I was facilitating an event and I did the if you knew me and if you really knew me exercise, and I realized the gap that we oftentimes have in corporate circles around how much to share, how much not to share. And I think for me as a gay man, it was one of those things where people are always wondering, is he not in the meetings? And so just coming out of the closet in those moments can be a real vulnerable moment, but it actually helps create, I don't know, a more openness to deal with me as a person kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I think actually that's something that happens with a lot of LGBTQ folks when we come out is people perceive us as vulnerable, whether or not we necessarily feel that in the moment may depend on the person, right? But people perceive us as vulnerable, and then I think that they will be more open to sharing some of their own stuff, right? Whether or not we like it.
Yeah, first time I came out, like seven of my colleagues came up to me and came out to me. Like it
Yeah.
turned out there was a whole like group of us that we didn't
Mhm.
even know about. So I was trying to
Yeah.
secretly find a way to have a party for everybody so they can all come out to each other, but I didn't want to out anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I think vulnerability is contagious in a good way. And
agreed.
I
Agreed.
think right now a lot of people are having a hard time, and I think it's just important to talk about this stuff. So,
It starts at the top. Like when I'm coaching a leader of an organization, I often recommend that they start with, "Hey, my biggest fail this week was," to set a precedent of
Yes.
letting everybody know it's okay to talk about the mistakes. In fact,
Yes.
let's celebrate the mistakes and what we learned from them.
That's right. And it gives other people permission to do the same, which I think can create more psychological safety. People are more willing to make mistakes. They're more willing to try sooner and harder. And by the way, for folks who are kind of on the receiving end of any conversations where there's a little bit of sharing, be open, be kind. I didn't have to say that, but I had to say it. So just gotta keep kind when people are sharing with us. All right. Well, let's get into this week's good vibes. The first story this week is from the National Football League, where Autumn Lockwood became the first Black woman to coach in a Super Bowl 2 years ago and just became the first Black woman to be a Super Bowl champion coach with the Philadelphia Eagles. She is the associate performance coach, has been instrumental in developing elite athletes for the past few years. Big deal. I mean, we're still getting firsts. I mean, I think that I share a first at least a few times a month on 5 things.
I love this trailblazer story, breaking the glass ceiling. Anytime there's somebody that is opening doors for other people like this. I also think about the fact that I don't think that's what she set out to do. It wasn't her intention
Sure.
to. She followed her passion and it naturally came out. I also think that it speaks to diversity in leadership and how, when there is a diversity of perspectives, there is a greater chance of success. And with the NFL being 95% white male dominated like that, it is interesting to have somebody rise up and represent in that way.
Absolutely. I agree. And you're absolutely right. There is such a lack of diversity in coaching in particular, and certainly not on the field. And so it's really awesome to have a Black woman really make it that far and really pave the way for others.
If I could add, one of my favorite things about this is immediately afterwards, she posted on Instagram the 7 women that are also on the team, that are in the support team. And I'm like, amplify, like that's the
Yes.
job. When you get that position, make sure that we're amplifying those at the others that are also rising up.
I agree. I agree. All right. The second story also comes from the Philadelphia Eagles, where the quarterback, Jalen Hurts, he just won the Super Bowl and his all-woman management team made history. So he was seeking out the best and organically ended up with a woman manager, woman publicist, like everyone basically on his whole team is women. And his agent is Nicole Lynn, who orchestrated a huge contract for him. So I love that this is happening as well. And he's shouting them out because they believed in him, right?
Yeah, like it really is another positive story of, I mean, for me, I first look at like who are we surrounding ourselves with? And he made the choice to surround himself with 5 powerful women. And I think, I don't know, I read the story about how she and he connected, but what really blows my mind in all this is people think of negotiation as a man's sport. Like you gotta, and she went in after he lost the Super Bowl and negotiated an extension of his contract that is one of the highest, biggest contracts in NFL history. Like
Yep.
she crushed the illusion, in my opinion, on that one.
That's right. At the time of his contract, it was the largest by annual value negotiated by a woman. Love it.
Love it.
All right. Well, keeping up this representing of women, for the first time in history, women achieved gender parity on the big screen in 2024. So, a groundbreaking 42% of the top 100 films last year featured female leads, which matched male led films. Another 16% were ensemble led. So, we're talking about hits like Wicked, Inside Out 2, Mean Girls, all of which were very profitable. Love it.
Very profitable, and it's a trend, and it really is it's a real moment that I think women are going to be able to look back and say, boom, we have the ROI, we have the statistics,
Yep.
Female lead roles can create a profitable movie. In fact, it is on parity with male lead. But I think there's a bigger story here. For me, it flips the scale. For the
Mm-hmm.
first time ever, storytelling as a human race has been more male hero focused, and now we have it switched the other way. And I just have to tap back to Barbie and Greta, because I
Yes.
think he started to pave that path, right?
Mm-hmm.
And created that possibility for that switch. And I'm sorry, I got to put it in here. Madonna. I got my minor in film, and we studied Madonna's videos. It was the first time that the camera had ever been viewed from a female perspective.
Mm.
So it's like we have been seeing people knock on this ceiling for 20 plus years to show a different perspective, both in the way the view, the way it's portrayed, and the story itself. And now last year, we saw the confluence of all of this. The story is flipped. Women are taking the lead, and I'm all for it.
Yes, I love it as well. And it's obviously good for everyone. It's good for everyone. That means there's going to be more people behind the camera who are women, more people on set. I mean, it's just all related. Okay, the fourth story this week is about a movement to end ghosting in hiring. So, with over 14 million job applications ignored in one quarter, hiring platforms are stepping in to demand accountability. So, LinkedIn, Indeed, and Greenhouse now highlight employer responsiveness. And Greenhouse even has badges which reward fair and structured hiring practices that reduce bias. So these ghosting and bias hiring practices disproportionately impact underrepresented groups. So this is a big deal.
It's huge because it's putting the focus on employers to be transparent about their
Yes.
process. And you mentioned this in your book, actually, that millennials and Gen Z are looking for companies that are inclusive and have diversity and have these things.
Mm-hmm.
And just like I'm a Gen X too, back in my day, we were looking for companies that had like a gym and had like babysitting and had like all the things that they were offering. The new generation is looking for these elements, and these intermediaries of Indeed and Greenhouse and LinkedIn are now holding accountable the employers to both
Mm-hmm.
step up their, like, I mean, come on, please reply. It's so hard to apply and never hear back what's going
Yeah.
on. So talent is now going to be looking for the employers who are promoting fair practices
Yeah.
and not ghosting anymore. More of this, please.
Yes, more of that. Love it. Okay, and the last story this week is about DEI on the pickleball court. Folks who read my stuff, listen to me, know that I love pickleball. So Vivian Russ wrote on Threads, quote, had an amazing experience with diversity, equity, and inclusion today in my pickleball league. We have 4 new players who are deaf or hearing impaired. They can't hear when a score is called or a line call is made. So all 60 of us agreed to the hand signals we would use. So diversity equals encouraging hearing impaired players to join our league. Equity equals using hand signals so we all know the score and line calls. And inclusion equals asking them to teach us the sign language for numbers so we could say and sign the score. I love this. And thank you to Karen Catlin for sharing this with me.
Yeah, I have a lot to say, but I feel like I should leave it to you as the pickleball expert in this. I do love a feel-good story. I love the fact that people recognize the need for inclusion and integrated it. And I love that we have that element and that it's happening. And yeah, but I don't understand pickleball. So I'm glad that you can bring
Yes.
that voice.
Well, here's the thing. I think, first of all, in my experience, pickleball is very diverse. A lot of age diversity, a lot of just diversity in general. And what I love about this is, first of all, the fact that, this person broke out how DEI is being actually used. But I think it's just showing kind of simple respect. And I think the way DEI is being weaponized right now, people are forgetting that it means things like accessibility and people with disabilities. And it just is a lot broader than I think people think about. And so I think when we hear like a simple story of coming together and supporting one another and showing respect and, those types of things, those count, right? So we're not asking people to, build a rocket ship to the moon to figure it's really simple. The concepts are really simple. And so that's what I love about this, is that it's sort of just a simple way to show that we love and respect one another. All right. Well, let's get into this week's Good Vibes to Go. I'll share my good vibe to go, and then I will invite you to share yours. So my good vibe to go is, do you want some Girl Scout cookies? Consider buying them from some trans girls, thanks to a curated list by Erin Reed, and I'll make sure that gets put in the show notes. All right. What's your good vibe to go?
The thing that keeps going in my head is the golden bridge concept, and you mentioned this in your book as well, but the idea of giving people a graceful way to walk back what they've said, and being able to say, I'm not sure if you meant to, or maybe you don't realize. I mean, for me, again, assuming positive intent is so hard when it's a triggering thing, but that idea of a golden bridge is in my mind. It keeps me remembering that, hey, we all still have to get along here. And I can still find a way. And so using the golden bridge.
Awesome. I will make sure we get that in the show notes. Salvatore, it's been awesome having you on the show this week. How can folks get in touch with you?
Thank you, Bernadette. It's been a pleasure to be here. I'd love to hear from you at youthanmeplaybook.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a great guest. I hope that you have a great week. And folks, if you don't already get the 5 Things newsletter, please subscribe at 5thingsdei.com. And please give me I would love to get some more reviews and some more 5-star ratings, if you believe this is worth a 5-star rating, on podcast platforms. Last year, someone wrote that the show promotes toxic positivity. So I would love some reviews to sort of counteract that. It's not what I try to do. So please rate and review and subscribe. Thank you, folks. Hope you have a great week. Thank you for listening to 5 Things in 15 Minutes. I hope you found yourself inspired by at least one of this week's stories. If you did, would you mind sharing it with a colleague and leaving us a review on your favorite podcasting platform? And if you don't already get my 5 Things newsletter, join at 5thingsdei.com. I'm Bernadette Smith, and I'll see you next week right here for 5 Things in 15 Minutes, bringing good vibes to DEI.